They're still working on playing a full 60, but at least this time, 40 minutes was enough to get the win. What's cracking, everybody, and welcome back to Kraken R&R, as the Kraken win this one 6-2 in Buffalo with 6 unanswered goals after a not-so-great first period to hopefully start what will be a lengthy winning streak to get back in the hunt a little bit. Okay, if we're being honest, that might be a little bit far-fetched at this point in time, but at least this game was fun to watch after the first period, which honestly, if you turned the game off after the first period, I don't really blame you, but you missed a pretty fun 40 minutes that followed. And you know what? Let's just jump right into the game, where Decord gets his first start in net since the last game before the Christmas break. He did play almost the entire second half of the previous game in Columbus after the Kraken just fell apart in front of Grubauer defensively. And we'll get the not-so-fun part of this game, which is pretty much just the first period out of the way here pretty quick. The Kraken played a bad first period. I mean, I'd call it a terrible period, but at least they played passably defensively in their own end of the ice. Still not great or even really good defense in their end, but a lot better than what we've seen, certainly in the game against Columbus, and even in large stretches of, well, most of the season, but the couple of losing streaks they've had here recently have featured much worse defense than what we saw here in this first period. Really, the problem was more that they just spent the entire period playing defense. They only end up with 2 shot attempts at 5-on-5 through the course of this first period, and one of them comes on the second or third shift of the game, and then they don't get another one until they'd already given up the first goal, which, although it does come from a pretty open shot, it is from the outside the face-off dot, and Dunn is doing a pretty good job of not only blocking off a passing lane, but also gets his stick in front of the shot. But of course, when it rains, it pours, so even with Dunn getting a piece to try and block this shot, it goes off the blade of his outstretched stick and into perfectly the top side near corner of the net over the glove of Decord. Not really much chance for him, it's just a nice deflection. It just happens to be off his own defenseman's stick, and it's 1-0 Sabres. So go figure, even when the Kraken do something reasonably well defensively, or at least in the right spot, it still ends up in the back of their own net. And then from there, again, the entire first period is all Sabres. The Kraken with the 2 5-on-5 shots to, I think it was 29-30 shot attempts at 5-on-5 for the Sabres, so they really do spend pretty much the entire first period in the Kraken side of center ice. And again, at least the Kraken were keeping most of that to the outside and not having those huge defensive lapses that we saw time and time again in Columbus, and that absolutely terrible, inexcusable defensive performance there where they just left Grubauer out to dry time and time again, not losing guys completely on the backside of plays and not leaving guys unchecked in front of the net. It was really just one chance that Buffalo got that was like that. They left Peterka completely wide open on the backside of a play midway through the period, and he had a completely empty net to shoot at with Decord not able to get back across and up towards the top of his crease to take the shooting lane on the other side away, but Peterka puts it wide of the net. Decord is able to reach back and get a piece of it, but it wouldn't have been on net anyway. So the Kraken dodge a bit of a bullet there. And otherwise, there were some good chances. Decord did have to make a few pretty good saves, but it wasn't anything as bad as what we saw certainly in Columbus and have seen with the Kraken in these periods where they just can't get out of their own way in games past. So I don't know if it was just that the Kraken didn't feel like they got enough practice playing in their own end of the ice after what they did in Columbus, which would be totally fair, but they certainly get plenty of game action practice in this first period, spending, I mean, I've said it already a couple of times, but the entire period basically in their end until we can get into the final couple of minutes where the two teams start trading power plays. It's the Kraken to get the first chance on the power play, and they get some good puck movement, a couple shots on goal, which brings their total of the period up to 3, but still aren't able to get one past Luukkonen, and then back at 5-on-5 for a couple minutes. The Kraken aren't able to build off of it, so they remain useless at 5-on-5 offensively in the first period. Eventually, the Sabres will get their first power play, and midway through it, they're able to score. Some good puck movement. They just kind of walk the Kraken down towards their net, and then a long pass, a one-time shot from the far side gives Decord little chance. He does get his blocker on it, but it still goes off his blocker into the top corner to give the Sabres the 2-0 lead. At the very least, Decord would learn from this. They would try pretty much the exact same play on the power play later on in the game, and Decord, seeing it coming all the way, was able to read that one and get over a bit quicker to make that save from an even more dangerous one-time shot. This time, though, it does put the Sabres up 2, and the Kraken find themselves once again in an early hole. Not long after, Bjorkstrand lays a big hit along the boards on Gilbert, and he doesn't like it, so he gets up, and Bjorkstrand willingly drops gloves with him, or somewhat willingly. I think the issue was a bit forced, but either way, Bjorkstrand picks up his first fight as a Kraken and just his third of his career, so the Kraken can't play offense, but sure, why not? Bjorkstrand is going to fight a guy that is well above his size. They both go to the locker room with the fights. The Kraken pick up a power play with the added roughing call given to Gilbert. And once again, they aren't really able to do much of anything with this power play. They do get a couple good shots right away. They get a shot and then 2 rebound shots. Some pretty good high danger chances, but Luukkonen just happens to be in the right place at the right time for all of those. None of them find the back of the net, and then past that little flurry there at the start of that power play, the Kraken create nothing on the rest of it to get into the first intermission, down to nothing. Oh, and also Buffalo's going to start the second period on the power play, which they get late in the first. In the waning seconds of the Kraken power play, actually with about 30 seconds left in it, they get a penalty to go to 4-on-4. Then Buffalo has a power play that still has about a minute left as we start the second. Thankfully, at least the Kraken are able to kill off this Sabres power play pretty effectively, both to end the first period and to start the second. And then we pretty much stay at special teams. It's not much longer before the Kraken are back on a power play of their own. Really need to make something happen. And while they do get a few more shots on goal, still nothing especially dangerous. Certainly not as dangerous as we saw in that little burst of action at the start of the second power play, or really even the couple of shots they got on the first one. So the Sabres maintain a 2-0 lead into another power play that they get almost immediately after this Kraken one comes to an end. And it's somewhat bewildering how Buffalo ends up on this power play, as it all comes from Tanev taking a shoulder or an elbow to the head from behind. He doesn't see the hit coming. His head gets hit and then goes into the boards. Fortunately, he gets up and turns out to be okay. It's probably why this doesn't lead to more, because apparently you need to actually get injured to draw a call in the NHL, as the NHL continues to prove that they don't actually care that much about player safety when it comes to head contact. They call nothing other than an extra roughing call on Dahlin for that shoulder or elbow to the head of Tanev. At the very least, though, the Kraken do come to Tanev's defense. It creates a whole bunch of chaos and punching and shoving and extracurriculars along the boards around where that hit happened. And it turns out to be Cartier who comes in and gets a little bit of a couple of guys. He then draws 4 minutes of roughing for just the 2 minutes that they give Dahlin for having that head hit on Tanev. So somehow, out of all of it, Tanev nearly gets beheaded, and the Sabres get a power play. At the very least, though, once again, the Kraken penalty kill steps up, and actually midway through the power play, Tanev gets a breakaway chance shorthanded, which I think he was really itching to put this one in the back of the net, maybe a little bit too much, so he overhandles the puck as he gets up in front of the net, bobbles it a bit, and Luukkonen's able to shove it out to the side or freeze it. Either way, Tanev kind of misses the last handle to try and get it around the leg of Luukkonen and just leaves it in front of the net where he's able to get the glove on it, so isn't able to get one there. He will eventually get one at the end of the game, but yeah, I think he really wanted that one after the sequence that led to this Buffalo power play in the first place. Eventually, those we do get back to 5-on-5 for at least the rest of the second period anyway, with the Kraken able to kill the rest of that power play off successfully. The Kraken also seem to have woken up after all of that going on, or who knows, maybe at some point they realized that it was Decord in net, so they were actually free to go play some offense, because I guess goal support, again, only happens really for Decord. Okay, I suppose the Kraken did give Grubauer a couple of games of goal support back against the Canucks and Utah, but either way, it's been pretty light offensively in return for what they've done defensively in front of Grubauer. Now with Decord in net, they still made him work in the first period, but at least they give him some support back the other way here in the second. It's a bit of a back and forth period. The Kraken still giving up some chances the other way, but they're getting more than they're giving back at Buffalo's end of the ice. And eventually the Kraken are able to get on the board, cut the lead in half about halfway through the second period as Montour carries the puck in transition through the neutral zone into the offensive end, then dumps it in deep to go chase it down along the boards behind the net. As he gets to it, takes a quick look over his shoulder to see if there's anyone behind him, what help he has, realizes that the rest of the team has gone off on a change, so instead of just rimming it up along the boards to a defenseman or another forward, since he is a defenseman, up in the corner to get offensive zone time that way, he just goes and slams it against the boards and tries to keep it there as long as he can against a couple of Sabres in against him, so more Kraken can get out on the ice. Eventually they do. They come to his aid, but it is the Sabres who are able to get it back. It's Gilbert, the guy that fought Bjorkstrand for that hit earlier on in the first period on him, that gets the puck eventually away from Montour, and then he just tries to clear it up past the blue line, but throws it right to Chandler Stevenson as he comes in on that change. And Stevenson quickly finds a wide open Riker Evans as the entire Buffalo defense got sucked into that play. Evans, all alone on the far side, is able to skate in, fire off the shot and put it off the armpit of Luukkonen and into the back of the net to give the Kraken their first goal of the game, get them on the board, and like I said, cut that lead in half. So it's nice to see that the Kraken aren't the only ones that can completely forget about players on the far side of play, have a defensive breakdown, and actually have it cost them. Or I suppose, moreover, it's just nice to see the Kraken taking advantage of one of those opportunities the other way. From there, coming off of Evan's 5th of the season, play continues to be back and forth. At this point, really even maybe the Sabres getting the better quality of the opportunities, even if the Kraken are getting a little bit more quantity. Daccord having to make a couple pretty nice saves, including one breakaway one where at the last second he gets some help from Alexiak. But things are looking like we're going to go into that third period with the Kraken once again trailing. Right up until, with less than a minute left, the Kraken get one more crack at it in the offensive end. It's a shot from well out off of Mahura's stick that bounces off of Luukkonen out to the far side where, I mean, it's a couple of unusual suspects. One with Mahura that has the shot, and then Andrei Burakovsky, who's standing all alone next to the net, completely forgot about by the Sabres defense. He picks up that rebound, handles it once, gets it to the backhand, and just shovels it into the back of the net, or really the top of the net, to tie the game here in just the last few seconds of the second period. And honestly, I don't know what was more surprising on this play, that there was another defensive breakdown that the Kraken could take advantage of, though I think any Sabres fan would tell you that that part wasn't so surprising. They've been having some trouble keeping leads throughout the course of the season, or that the Kraken were actually there to take advantage of with someone going to the net, which is not something the Kraken have really done a whole lot of this season. It's been a bit of a problem for them offensively, getting any kind of traffic around the net to be able to take advantage of things like this when they happen. And then the fact that it was Andrei Burakovsky, or that he was actually able to take that situation and turn it into a goal where, I mean, he's been able to create some plays this season, but for whatever reason, it always seems to fall apart for him at the last possible second. It doesn't this time. He ties the game, and the Kraken are going to go into that intermission and third period no longer down like they have been pretty much every game here over this last stretch. Though they do take a penalty in the final seconds, so once again the Sabres are going to start another period on a power play, and this time they'll get the full 2 minutes of it, which certainly isn't ideal. But after this second period and the Kraken able to claw back from what they did in the first, and especially after the second period that we watched in Columbus and some not so great second periods before that, I think you'll take it. Anyway, the Kraken are able to kill off that Buffalo power play as well, and then the floodgates open for the Kraken. First, it's an offensive rush chance down the other way as they finally get things turned back around after a couple more shots that Buffalo gets coming out of their power play at 5-on-5. The Kraken, once again, getting to the net. It's a shot on from Andrei Burakovsky after a nice little pass back and forth for Dunn to take the defense with him. Burakovsky gets that shot off. It is saved by Luukkonen, but bounces out in front where Oliver Bjorkstrand is, well, kind of the one Kraken among a bunch of Sabres, so at least this one they're doing a good job of clogging things up in front of the net and not allowing dangerous chances, but Bjorkstrand's still the one that's able to get his stick on it. He gets the shot towards the net, but isn't really able to control where it's going too much, so the shot goes off Luukkonen's pad, up in the air out to the far side, where there's no danger of anything bad happening for the Sabres. For one, the puck is above the crossbar at this point, so it couldn't get hit with a high stick even if there was a Kraken player there, and the only guy there is a Sabre. It's Jacob Bryson, so at least they learned from their previous mistake and aren't allowing Kraken players uncontested right around the net. So Bryson goes up to glove the puck down and get control of it, but then it hits his glove and whoops, it AZ tumbles into the net to give Bjorkstrand the unassisted goal. You don't see that very often, and it's certainly a weird way to have the eventual game winner find the back of the net. I suppose in some ways it kind of makes up for the unfortunate goal that went in to start the game off, Dunn's stick at the very beginning, but this one seems like one of the most fortunate bounces we're going to see all season, and honestly one of the most fortunate bounces we've seen happen for the Kraken in their existence to this point. And you know what, after all the good chances that Bjorkstrand has had here over this last little stretch that have not gone in for him, I feel like he kind of deserves it. He picks up his 12th of the season, and the Kraken take that lead and run with it. Not even 40 seconds later, it's the Kraken with the puck again, rushing down the ice through the neutral zone in transition into the offensive end cleanly, which is another thing we've not seen the Kraken have a whole lot of success doing in transition. That blue line has been a bit of a tough nut for them to crack here recently, but they get cleanly in the offensive end. It's Mahura who gets the puck up to Kakko. Down along the boards, he gets up to kind of the face-off dot, winds up and fires off a wrist shot. It's an absolute bullet that finds the back of the net. I don't think Luukkonen even touches it, so it's nothing but net for Kakko. He gives the Kraken the 4-2 lead. with his 6th of the season and 2nd as a Kraken. Then just seconds after this goal, the Kraken in the offensive end once again draw another penalty, go to their 4th power play of the game, and while this time it's a little bit less do or die feeling, it's not a power play where you really feel like the Kraken need to make something happen because, well, this time they actually have a lead and it's a multi-goal lead rather than being multiple goals down like they were before. Well, it'd still be nice to see the power play make something happen just to get this power play rolling a little bit again. It started to cool off here a bit after a pretty decent last month or so of 2024. And wouldn't you know it, about halfway through the power play, that's just what happens, as a puck down along the boards is fought and won for by Shane Wright as he kind of gets his stick around the Sabre that's about to get to it, gets the toe of the stick to it and shovels it out to McCann, and he takes a split second with it just to make sure he gets the puck far enough away from the boards to where he can get a good clean pass out to a wide open Kaapo Kakko standing all alone in front of the Sabres net. The puck gets to him, he winds up and fires off the one-time shot from right at the top of the crease, through the 5-hole into the net to give him his 2nd goal in just about a minute's time. This one on the power play, and the Kraken now a 5-2 lead as they have absolutely unloaded on the Sabres here in just a couple minutes time early on in the 3rd to make it now 5 unanswered goals and give the Kraken that 3-goal lead. And then real quick after this goal, there was another little push and shove between, he keeps showing up, but Gilbert and Kakko after he scores. I don't know if Gilbert was just frustrated that he, as one of the 2 defensemen on the penalty kill, completely forgot about a guy in front of the net who ends up scoring. Either way, that draws in the linesman to break it up, and then as a result, as the Kraken come together for their celebratory hug, Montour makes sure that linesman gets to join right in. It's just kind of a funny little moment. And from there, the Kraken continue to get some more chances. Really, there's chances both ways. The rest of the 3rd period continues to be fairly back and forth. DeCourt has to make definitely a few more saves throughout the rest of this 3rd period as the Sabres try to claw back. A couple nice ones, but he's able to save everyone that comes at him. The Kraken get a couple more chances. About halfway through the 3rd, Kakko has a chance to get the hat trick as a few shots on net have been another flurry of action in the offensive end. Sees one rebound go just past him out of reach to where if it had gone right at him, he would have had enough net to shoot at that he would have had a good chance for the hat trick, but that doesn't happen for him. The Kraken do end up killing off another Sabres power play late in it, and then with about 4 minutes left, the Sabres pull Luukkonen to have the empty net, the 6-on-5 extra skater out there. Doesn't take too long for the Kraken to find the back of it. It's Tanev from McCann, so Tanev gets that goal to, I'm sure, exercise a little bit of the frustration that still lingered from that hit that he took with ended up resulting in a Buffalo Sabres power play earlier on in the game, and the Kraken come away with the important 6-2 victory. Staying undefeated in Buffalo and 6-1 against them all time. Still yet to play them in Seattle. That'll come in a few weeks' time, 2 weeks' time, something like that. So it still certainly was not a perfect game from the Kraken by any stretch of the imagination. That first period was still pretty much a disaster. Maybe not quite as much defensively as the second period in Columbus was, but it was one of the worst offensive periods the Kraken have had all season long. But the Sabres do help them out by giving them enough chances to claw back into it in the second period, basically handing them good opportunities for 2 goals that they take advantage of. And then the Kraken really get things rolling with another strong 3rd period, completing their 6th multi-goal comeback of the season, which leads the NHL by 2. Second place is a tie between the Ducks and Golden Knights, so a couple more Pacific Division teams. I don't know what's going on in the Pacific. But either way, the Kraken now leading the NHL in multi-goal comeback wins this season, a stat which they were the only team last year to not get a single such win in. So while in a lot of respects this season does feel pretty similar to last season in that it's been very disappointing, the standings make it look like another very long shot at the midway point of the season that the Kraken have any chance of making a postseason. But at the very least, you no longer feel like the game is over when the Kraken go down 2 goals. Sure, it feels a little bit too familiar, but at least the Kraken have a chance and have shown that they are one of, if not the best team in the NHL at coming back from those deficits. I mean, they have the most wins, so I suppose they are. And sure, the pessimistic side of that is that the Kraken have had a lot of chances to pick up wins like that so far this season, which has kind of been a big part of the problem so far, but at least they've been able to do it somewhat frequently, more frequently than any other team. Unlike last year where they didn't do it a single time, so at least games are still somewhat worth watching even when they do have yet another bad start to a game. It's nice to see that they can at least fight back the other way. And another good thing to come out of this game is that even if things are headed towards another missed playoffs for the Kraken, which is much more likely than not at this point, Some of the young players were some of the guys that were contributing in this game, parts of the Kraken future, especially if Capo Caco's kept around, which I think you'd have to assume that he will be. He gets 2 goals, including one on the power play. Beniers looks good. That line continuing to be the one consistent driver of offense for the Kraken. And then you got Riker Evans stepping up and getting a goal. Plus, even though he's not one of the younger guys, contract-wise, he will be on this team for quite a while. Chandler Stevenson is now on a 5-game point streak and had 2 assists in this game, so while he's still a bit of a liability defensively and had some more of these plays where he's just kind of following a guy around, watching him skate around with the puck, at least he's starting to produce at the other end of the ice. And I suppose through all of it, which has been one of, if not the worst season from a Kraken forward we've ever seen, at least to this point anyway, he still is leading the team in assists with 24. So while the Kraken still need him to play some form of actual defense at some point this season, he's at least making something happen the other way. But anyway, since we have another game coming up here in the middle of the day on Sunday, who knows by the time you're watching this, maybe that game's already happened or it's midway through that game. Hopefully it goes well for the Kraken against a red-hot Red Wings team. They've won 6 straight coming into it, and they're also not on the second half of a back-to-back, which the Kraken are, and well, as we know, the Kraken have had not a lot of success on the second half of back-to-backs, or really just back-to-backs in general, but especially the second half of weekend back-to-backs have been a problem for this team so far. Either way, hopefully that game goes well for them. But let's close this one out with the Kraken 3 stars, as always brought to you by the patrons over on Patreon. If you do want to help decide Kraken 3 stars after Kraken games, then you can help support a little bit more than you already are by watching this point, which thank you very much if that is you, by supporting through the link down below in the description on Patreon as well. With the 3 stars, well, personally, I wasn't going to disagree too much with the official 3 stars, but Patreon has decided a different third one. The first one, though, I think is pretty obvious. Well, I guess it's kind of between 2 guys, but I'm going to go with Decord as the first star, coming in his first start since that injury in the middle part of that game against the Avalanche before the Christmas break, which he did stick out the rest of that game, but then missed some time and was on the IR, even though it was kind of a retroactive IR stint. Either way, he comes back in his first start and was fantastic for the Kraken, kept them in the game in the first period and even through parts of the second so that they could make that comeback happen with the 6 unanswered goals. Second star, Capo Caco's the other obvious one. 2 goals in this game that really opened this one up. Neither one is a game-deciding goal, but he was fantastic all game long and was the guy that stood out most on that line that, again, is really the only one generating consistent offense for the Kraken at this point in time. And then the third star, personally, I would have stuck with Mahura, who was the official star in the game, but I can't argue too much with what Patreon went, and that was with Brandon Tanev. Tanev does get the goal in the game. The fourth line had an okay game, but Tanev is always one of those guys that is going to draw a lot of attention. Unfortunately, he draws the attention of an elbow to the head, is able to stick that out, gets up and sticks up for himself, which is probably part of why it was only a roughing call and not what it really should have been, which was maybe even a 5-minute major and kicked out of the game for contact to the head. That's how the rule is written. Either way, he's able to play the rest of the game, has that breakaway chance on the ensuing power play for the Sabres out of him getting hit in the head, and then ends up with the empty netter. Another great game from him. He also leads the NHL in blocks for forwards, so even if he does end up leaving at the deadline, there are parts of his game that the Kraken will certainly miss. Also, weirdly enough, they showed this on the broadcast, but his brother leads the entire NHL in blocks. He's a defenseman, so then Tanev leads the NHL in blocks for a forward. I guess the Tanev brothers just really like having pucks shot at them or something. I don't know. Anyway, let me know what you think down in the comment section below. If you'd have a different 3 stars. I mean, a couple other guys had good games. Stevenson, who has not ingratiated himself particularly well through the first half of his first year as a Kraken to the fans with some pretty bad defensive zone play, does have 2 assists in this game and has now a 5-game point streak. And you've got, obviously, Burakovsky also has been kind of in a similar boat there, but he gets a goal. Shane Wright with an assist. McCann with 2 assists. There were some good games mixed in here, even through a tough first period. Anyway, love to know your thoughts, and, well, until tomorrow, stay safe out there, be good to each other, God bless, and go Kraken.